Today, I feel the hope of the hard. And it's interesting, as I share work about learning how to hold space for and process difficult emotions, aka struggle better, I always get pushback. Why don't you feel joy? Did I say I don't feel joy? I experienced joy in so many ways during these last few years of struggle. If I didn't experience joy in these ways, I might not still be here. This is why I call it the wild edges of being human. Something in our society has lost the ability to hold the nuance, the complication, the both and. Every single day, most days, outside my office window, there is a native Texas tree that I planted. I envisioned that spot and lived here for a few years before I could afford to plant this baby tree that has now grown into about a 9-foot tall tree. It's a Texas purple mountain laurel. And March, this month, it will bloom. These gorgeous purple flowers that you can smell from yards away. It smells like purple candy. And often when I look outside, there are either butterflies or hummingbirds right outside my window. If not that, then I look outside my window and I see deer walking through my yard. I get joy just seeing the trail where they walk through every day, seeing the trail disrupted in the mulch. When I take my dog out to go to the bathroom, and because I have a pool, I don't let my dogs out in the backyard without being there. And so 11 o'clock at night, I take my dog out to go to the restroom, and I live in a dark sky city, which means we don't have lights that are to interfere with the skies. And I look up and I see the other day, right? It was Moon and Venus and Jupiter and Mars all in a line, all visible to the naked eye. And I felt tremendous joy. And during those days, I also held space for and felt without shame my fear and my sadness and my disappointment that are a natural part of being human. And there are some days when I feel the pushback and I'm a little bit more tender and sensitive and attached to the encouragement. And then other days when I recognize that allowing ourselves to be whole is a more helpful goal. And so much of my life and training from a child on the way up, my conditioning, and even and especially in the coaching world, it is so centered around arriving at some place. Or it's centered around this version of Buddhism that I probably misunderstand, that is like this love and light, accept it all. Many years ago, I was a guest on a coaching conversation with 200 people on this Zoom call. And I don't even remember what we talked about. And I remember at the end, the coach had a way when he brought in experts and brought in guests of asking his audience to, instead of clapping on the Zoom, to type something, of appreciation specifically, like give a specific appreciation or a takeaway in the comments. And flooded all these beautiful comments. But the one I remember is the woman that said, "This lady is angry." And at first I felt offended. And then I realized I am angry. And I don't ever let it out, but you saw it. And all these years later, last night, I went with a girlfriend to a sporting goods store, and they have not only punching bags, but they have those punching bags that are it's called a bob, and it looks like a man. And I punched that sucker a few times and it felt so good. I slapped it, I punched it in the face. I got my stance. I just let her rip, and it felt so good to release and express some of that anger in a healthy way. I remember one time a post on Instagram where I talked about emotions aren't a problem to solve, and that I personally come from the stance, I don't like that in the science of psychology. They call these emotions this, whether they're called shadow or negative emotions. I don't like that attribution of negative. It tends to have a moral judgment on it, or it causes us to continue to fear it. Yeah, they're uncomfortable. They're not widely accepted by society. They're often shamed and shoved down. And we don't learn how to feel these things appropriately. And honestly, most of our parents teach us how to be potty trained and how to eliminate those things appropriately at the appropriate time, place, and way. But we don't learn how to take in information from the world and have a biological, emotional, psychological response, and then learn how to discharge that, to actually feel our emotions, to feel safe feeling our emotions. And last night in that store, I felt safe being angry. And it felt good. And what brought that up was my girlfriend had said, "Oh, I'm going to do some tapping around my anger." And I asked her, I said, "Is tapping enough for your anger?" I get what EFT and tapping does. And it's still from the neck up, right? It's still like we're softly, gently tapping into new belief. And is there a way to experience some of this anger with the energy of anger? And so we went to the store to go find that bob and to beat it. And it was awesome. And we thought we were getting video footage, and we didn't. It was one of those technology errors. Notice how you may resist your struggle. And one of the wisest things my former therapist taught me many years ago, there was a time when I was struggling, I was crying, I was in an emotionally flooded place, and I was like, "I'm not okay," and I was crying. And he very compassionately connected with me, and he said, "I'd like to offer I can't remember what he called it, but something different. And it was, I am struggling and I am safe." And I realized that when you were little, it probably wasn't safe to struggle. It was not safe for me to struggle when I was a child. My big emotions were not handled well. I'm not saying my parents are horrible beings, but they didn't have that either. So much of humanity has a visceral response. You can see it in the way people handle grief. Oh, they dismiss it. Oh, there's a reason and a purpose. Don't tell that to somebody who's lost a loved one. And so this morning I woke up with hope of these skills. And when I really lean into them, and when I don't even get rid of the shame that was built into me around them, when I go forward and say, hello, shame, I see you, and I meet and befriend my shame and get curious and get understanding and witness it and nurture it, it begins to relax in me. We are not trying to get rid of all the discomfort. And even as a business coach, I would have clients that would come regularly to coaching sessions, both group and individual, experiencing doubt. I have been working for myself for 23 years. And doubt is my co-business partner. Scarcity is my business partner. So is joy and creativity. I have a whole inner team. But in all these years, and I remember talking to a group of women that were what we called advanced business owners. So they had been in successful business for 15 years or more. And there were about 12 of them on the call that day. And I just did a little impromptu poll, and I said, how many of you this week have experienced such extreme doubt in your successful business that you felt like quitting? And every single one of them raised their hand. And it was then we created a process in the models that I used to teach where you recognize that doubt is never going away. And that is not a hopeless statement. It is a deeper knowing and seeing the truth of being a complex biological human, and that holding ourselves to an impossible standard of being fear-free or doubt-free or rage-free only causes physical, mental, emotional, psychological, and could even cause harm outside of us if we let those behaviors go untended to. And I said untended to on purpose. I noticed in my mind, I started to say unchecked. I don't want to check those things. I want to tend to those things in the appropriate time and space. And that is something most people I know did not learn. Please know that being willing to learn how to be with yourself and eventually others in the wild edges, in the whole range of humanness, is empowerment. That's empowerment.